a big warm welcome for Mr. David James.
Wow. Thank you for that introduction, Brian. I appreciate it. Good morning. How are you? I'm really glad to be here. It's always my pleasure to come back to Texas and work with you. It's some of the finest people I've met in my life are right here, and a lot of them are in the room today. So I've got a distinct advantage today. I get to actually advance my slides. And you know, I did an Ignite session at ISTE, and when you get up there and do that the first time, that was the first time I did that, it should be renamed 5 Minutes of Terror, because it is something else when you got to get started and you got to go, and you saw that with some of the presenters and how you're waiting for that slide to advance and so on. So let's give them a big round of applause again for taking that step. Well done. Okay, I'm here to challenge you today. That's what my plan is. And I've got some interesting things to say. I'm going to take a look at digital technologies. Of course, that's why we're here. And I want to sort of push you in a couple different directions. One, I'm going to talk about two major ideas. And the first one is I'm going to have some unifying themes about a new vision for what schools are. And then I'm going to give you 5 what-ifs and challenge you to rethink how schools can potentially change in the result of digital technologies. So, a little bit about myself. That was a very nice introduction. I have been in teaching for 27 years. My background is actually in aquatic biology, if you can believe that. 27 years here I am. And I currently serve Glenbrook South High School as the Instructional Technology Coordinator. Now, if you're not familiar with Chicago, Glenbrook South is in Glenview, Illinois, about 9 miles northeast of O'Hare, and about 15 minutes due west of Evanston in Lake Michigan. We're a big school. We're 2,700 kids in one building. We're going up to 3,300, and that itself causes a lot of issues. We're 660,000 square feet under roof, 18 acres under roof. So we've got a big dynamic school. We're a high-performing school. We're on the North Shore of Chicago. We've got an average ACT of 25. Graduate 99% of our kids. 95% attend first-year college. We were one of the only school 5 years ago in the country to win a Grammy for their music department. So our culture is one that's very successful. We're in our 51st year of existence, and the bad side of that is we are labeled a failing school by the federal government, right? And so on one end, we are in restructuring. You can believe that. It's almost ridiculous to even think about that. So we're being pushed in one direction, and we have an opportunity to go in a completely new direction, and one that is really limitless in possibilities and potential given what connective technologies bring. So that's the dichotomy that we face today in education, and that is we have all those possibilities, yet for us, a really restrictive legislative regime that forces us and mandates us in our particular direction. Okay, for today, the resources, everything I'm going to say, the slide deck and so on, will be at this particular site, davidjakes.me. So feel free to use those resources. Slide deck will be there and some other things I'm going to challenge you with. Okay. This is my first computer. And it's probably the first computer for a lot of you in this room. The old Mac Classic, right? 2 megs of RAM, 2 megs of RAM, 40 megabyte hard drive, $1,600, right? What do you notice about this machine? In this picture, actually. What do you notice? Yeah, it's got, they didn't have, I think they at one time had color screens, but it's got iPad apps in it, right? And so if you take a look, what they've done is made this an iPad holder. Why would you do this? Okay. But for me, this is very representative of what I want to challenge you about today, is that when you take a look at your technology use, are you actually taking brand new, transformative, disruptive technologies and placing it into an old model? That's the challenge. Okay, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So one of the things that's really difficult for a presenter, and I had to get over this a couple years ago, is that every one of you, or most of you all, have devices, right? And so everybody hold them up once if you can. Take a look around the room. Okay, look at all the, oh God. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk in 140 characters the rest of the, I'm going to talk, you okay back there? Yeah, right. So I live in fear of the TECSIG hashtag right now because half of my friends are in here and you're all tweeting about what I'm saying, and that's an intimidating thing for a presenter. So this is what's changed. We've got all these different devices, and you know, I've got them too. Have you seen the Google Nexus 7 tablet? Okay. We've got that. And this is a really phenomenal device, by the way, if you haven't seen it. I'm not giving this away, by the way. And this is me when I was 2.5 on an iPad. And and we got that kind of device. And we got this, and this is what I'm really excited about, okay? I've got my laptop, I've got my Google tablet, and I've got my phone. And this is, of course, the Mac landscape, the Mac ecology, but that exists on the Android too. And this is really the emerging model in business today. It's called BYO3. Have you heard that? No, seriously, bring your own BYO3. And you've got your laptop, you've got a tablet, and you've got a phone, and that constitutes your device collection. And I think it's a really intriguing model for schools. And what I mean by that is this device is $199, right? Okay. And so could schools give, is that at a price point where every schools could provide every student with one of these? Okay. And then they still allow kids to bring their own devices, perhaps a MacBook Pro, to do some heavy lifting. Okay. You should know that we're a bring your own device school. We're not a one-to-one school. Our superintendent's not, oh, you're recording this, aren't you? All right. So how many of you right now are one-to-one in your school districts? Okay. How about bring your own device? Anybody bring your own? Okay, very good. All right, so we'll have some good things to talk about. Everybody's got devices except these kids, all right? And there it is right now. And when's the last time you learned like this? And it's ridiculous. You know, you held up all your devices and you're empowered, you have these devices, but our kids, what have we created in our schools that allow our kids to have this kind of experience? Now these kids, this is posed, right? All right, that is, I'll admit that, that's a posed. Yeah, but they're good at it, aren't they? Yeah. This girl actually is asleep. And I call this the 6x5 grid, and this is a model that doesn't work too much anymore, right? It's still what we're left with in a lot of our schools. I've got 140 different classrooms that look just like this. And the challenge for us is to rethink those spaces, and I'm going to be doing a learning space session tomorrow if you're interested in that. And so when we take this and you do this, okay, this is in our school, I will admit that. What's wrong here when you look at this? What challenges you when you look at this? It's the same model. It's just like that iPad, right? In that Mac Classic. You're taking a brand new technology with all the capacities and affordances that that technology brings, and we're putting it into an older classroom model. And we do have to consider space and how it impacts learning. The design of the space informs the learner of the intent of the kind of learning about to take place. So as we look at that, that's actually, we're stepping into a digital novel, digital textbook pilot. And so the kids in this particular, in this class, those are Chromebooks. They're bringing laptops, they're bringing iPads. And our challenge is, of course, is to make that device ecosystem work across all the different kinds of instructional situations we have, the kind of learning situations we have. Okay? So we've got that. And this is where it's really at for me. If you take a look, this is actually in our library. And look at the death grip on these things these kids have, huh? We've got, I mean, this is, all our kids have these, and that's not going to surprise you. But when you take a look at Bring Your Own Device, and it's interesting to see so many people in this room have that particular program, this is what we face in our classrooms. And this is actually, the kids went down to a science and industry museum in Chicago, and what they did was they actually took videos, and they're going to make a bigger video about their experience. But for the kids, that device is what? It's a capture device, but it's also where they view their videos and things they've captured. So the struggle was for the kids to take the videos that they've shot on those devices and move them off that device into a format that they can build a larger movie on. And do they know how to do that? Our kids had no clue. Okay, and what we have here is we've got a MacBook Pro, we've got a PC, we've got a flip camera, we have an iPad in there somewhere, BlackBerry, we have a Droid and an iPhone. And all those devices, when you look at that, how do you manage that as a teacher? That's a challenge, right? And how do you balance understanding and having to manage, or do you have to manage all those devices when they're in your classroom? Realizing that the kids don't know that much about those technologies beyond texting, beyond calling, taking photos and videos. Would you agree with that? Is there more for our kids today to know about technology? Okay, I'm going to speak more about that in a second. Okay, well, what are kids doing? And this is some research from Mimi Ito. If you've never read any of her work, I would highly suggest it. Mimi Ito. She's done a seminal ethnographic study called Hanging Out, Messing Around, and Geeking Out. Hanging around, messing out, and geeking out. And she will say this: students are engaged in friendship and interest-based activities when they're using technology. And if I were to ask you what friendship activities are, what are they, basically? Yeah, it's social media, right? It's Facebook and so on. And when we're talking about schools right now, where are kids migrating from Facebook? Where are they going? Our kids, in a big, big way. 2 locations. They're going from Facebook to Twitter, and they're going to Facebook to Tumblr. Tumblr is the new interest for our kids, at least in terms of an online presence. And so what she says is they need an academic intervention. So those tools that they bring are basically tools, social tools, and then you have the interest-based activities. And how about, what would an interest-based activity be? Anybody have an idea? It's a passion-based kind of activity. So for instance, if they are interested in photography, they would use those connections and those web resources to go online and find out about photography. So it's something that they're passionate about. So looking at social technologies, but also passion. And so our charge, at least what I think, is I believe very strongly in this. We need to help them understand how to use those tools for academic learning. That's the third part of that picture. Okay? That's very important. Richard Halverson, very similar thing. Take a look. I'll give you a second to read that. Two living channels. What's the institutional channel? It's school, right? And does that strike you as something, do you want to be categorized as an institutional channel? That doesn't sound too good, doesn't too appealing. And then you compare that up against a peer-driven, interest-driven, and unregulated media channel. And now we're talking about kids that go to school, and that school becomes one node in their learning. And do kids learn online by themselves? Yes, all the time. All the time. If you sit down and talk with them, you talk with our kids, they tell me all the time about the things that they learn outside of school. And is it important for us to think about this, a peer-driven, interest-driven, and unregulated digital media channel? How do we harness that? Okay? How do we take our classrooms, those classrooms that were designed 40 years ago, and incorporate this? Because it is extremely important that we consider how to do that. Right now, how many of you have a digital location for learning that is supported by your school? A digital location supported by your school. And I'm talking like a Blackboard presence, I'm talking about Moodle, Haiku, any of those learning management systems. Anything like that? Okay. How many of you are Google Apps for Education districts? Okay. All right, that's very intriguing. Do we need to have digital spaces for learning that are provided by the school? Yes or no? Yes, we do, in my opinion. Okay. All right. We have to have that guaranteed experience. Do you value right now, if I can talk about skills for a second, We're talking about communication, collaboration, creation. Do you value the ability of kids to communicate face-to-face? Would you value that? You certainly do, right? You're educators. Those things that you value in the face-to-face, do you also value those in a digital experience? And how are you working with your kids to understand how to collaborate both face-to-face but also digitally? It's a whole nother layer, a whole nother context to the kinds of things that we want kids to know and learn about. So we've got some work to do, okay? If you're talking about an unregulated media channel that kids are tapping into, how do we help them with building the skills and understandings that enable them to learn on their own, okay? But also, how do we do, as a school, provide those kinds of experiences on a day-to-day basis to build additional competencies? Okay. So, what we're talking about digital, we're talking about disruption. And I think right now, what we have, and this is evidenced by all the devices and what you're doing right now on those devices, and what you can do on those devices, that changes the game a little bit in terms of what our mission is, or does it change what our mission is, and does it change our vision? So let's talk a little bit about that. Are these the same, mission and vision? And it's an important consideration. It really is. Is mission, your mission and your vision for education the same? They're often used interchangeably, right? And I would argue that that's not correct, that they are indeed separate. What's your mission as an educator? In other words, before I have you answer that, I think I heard it back there. Do we have, everyone in this room have the same educational mission? Every one of us. What is it? It's 3 words. Help kids learn, right? Would you agree with that? That's our mission. Is that mission, was it true 20 years ago, 30 years ago? Will it be true 10 years from now? The answer to that's yes. Okay. What's the vision, though? If you were to take the vision and change it and think about that. It's what it looks like. It's how, right? How we get them to learn? Is your vision of learning, when I started teaching in 1986, what did I have at my disposal in terms of technology? I walked in to a classroom and I had, my background's in aquatic biology, and so I'm going to start teaching botany for some reason. And I walk in, there's no curriculum, there's no textbook, there's no syllabus, and I'm in the greenhouse, and my department chair comes in and says, your poinsettias are coming in 2 days. What's a poinsettia? Lost my train of thought. That ever happened to you? Well, all the time. So back in '86, I had a slide projector and an opaque projector and a 16 millimeter, was my vision of how kids learned in '86 the same as it would be today? Of course not. We've got all the additional kinds of components that we can leverage to change that learning experience. When's the last time you sat down, let me backtrack a second. Do you really believe that a vision, to have a contemporary vision, is important for your schools? I mean, I'm serious about that, because don't we often give mission statements and vision statements lip service? There's something we put on our documents, something we put on our website, but we don't live it and breathe it every day, or do we? So when's the last time you went back, if a vision is something that rides on top of the mission that we all have, when's the last time you went back and said, we need to craft a contemporary shared vision that we all believe in, and that we live it, breathe it, and implement it fearlessly, and we see it every day in what we do and how we act? Okay? So, what would your vision right now be for your schools? I mean, when's the last time you went back and looked at that? And does it reflect learning with technology? And should it reflect learning with technology? Okay, leave that up to him. All right, so let's talk a couple things here. What do you want? The big question that I have for you today is, what do you want learning to look like? And it's an important consideration. What do you want learning to look like? And also, what do you want your school to be? What do you want your school to be? If they have all these different opportunities to learn outside of school is just a single node in their learning environment, what does school need to become to remain relevant in their world? So I'm going to give you a couple of unifying principles. Here they are. So I want to talk about vision, actually. This is all about vision. First unifying thing. I'll let you read that. So when I'm thinking about our current world, we have all these different devices, all these different technologies that allow us to connect and communicate together. And I've sort of called this the ecology of things. With my background in biology, I like this term of ecology. And ecology is really the study of living things in their environment. And so when I'm thinking about a school, I'm thinking about an underlying premise that contributes to a vision of the ecology of things, how we as human beings are networked together, how the technologies support those connections, and how they manifest in the process of learning. So we've got all kinds of different kinds of tools, conduits, that have to work together. So here's the first principle is the ecology of things. We've got Web 2.0 tools, we have apps on iPhones, iPads, Androids, we have social media, and we have things like Google Drive. Are you excited about this? Google Drive, those of you that have a Google Apps for Education, what's the difference with Drive? That's really sort of, in my mind, a pretty big deal. There's more, what?
Pretty much you can file type in here.
Yeah, there's an increase in memory, right? But the thing that I like is see this video? Yeah, it's the apps, isn't it? You know, you've been using, if you're using Google Apps and you can share a document, many of you probably have done that, and you can collaborate together on a document. Now, with Google Drive, you can install, and I think you could before, but it's a lot easier now. You can install into Drive, you can install applications. What's that mean? Well, think about it. This is WeVideo for Google Drive. If you install that application, what are you doing up in the cloud? Right here. What does this application allow you to do? Create content, specifically video, right? Together in the cloud. Imagine that, being able to create videos collaboratively in the cloud. And remember how with a just simple doc, you get to share. You share with other people. You can do this as well. So instead of just sharing a word processing document, now I have the capacity in Google Drive to actually share video creation, okay? Well, how does that kind of thing enter into what you want your school to be and what you want learning to look like? Okay, that's a very important thing. So when we're talking about that kind of capacity and all those kinds of tools that connect, that give people different kinds of capabilities, when we're in school, if we have dedicated spaces, we can help kids learn how to negotiate these kind of environments and be creators, remixers, and things like that. This is an important skill for us, for kids to build. Okay, so for me, this is starting to get really sort of interesting when I can go ahead and across all my devices access the tools I need, whether it's a phone, whether it's a tablet, whether it's a laptop, and I can connect with people to build together that's independent of time, space, and place. That's a big deal. How does your vision and what you do in your school reflect that kind of capacity? All right? Here's the second idea, and this might be new for you. Have you heard about the concept of transliteracy? Go ahead and read this. Oh, I knew that's going to happen. Too many mics. What does this mean? Concept of transliteracy. It's based in literacy, right? The ability to read and write and so on. Are there different kind of literacies? That's an important question and one that you should try and negotiate as a school. Are there different kinds of literacy, or is literacy just literacy? That's the subject of a whole entire discussion. But when we're talking about transliteracy, we're talking about the ability to read and write and interact across a range of mediums. And so what that means is, that means that I can sit down on a stool and I'm comfortable telling you a story, and I can do that. Or, conversely, I can take that story and use the highest performing multimedia tools to create a video and post it on YouTube and say, here I am, here's what I believe, and now I have that kind of voice. So what I'm looking at, in terms of vision, is I'm looking at a range of kinds of capacities or more modalities that kids have to exhibit, from the very basic face-to-face, no kind of technology, all the way to the highest range of technology use and everything in between, okay? My focus for my vision is I want kids to be able to demonstrate and be transliterate across a variety of media and mediums. I also want that to be, and that fits into the ecology of things because some of that is done face-to-face. Some of it is done with technology, and it's this big ecosystem that we have to negotiate that supports this range of literacies. Whew, that's a lot, right? Okay. Let me give you an example. And you're going to see this come up in the presentation a couple times. This is UMedia, the UMedia Center in Chicago. The librarians in the crowd perhaps will recognize this. This is in the Harold Washington Library in Chicago, and it's about a 4,000 square foot space. And it's actually phenomenal. Every single high school student in the city of Chicago has access to it. It's open after school and on the weekends. It's filled with adult mentors. And I'm going to present it to you down the road as an example of a school as studio. But what they do here is they get kids in and they connect with kids and help them explore media and what they can do with media to learn and what they can use media to produce. So one of the big things about this, and by the way, this is funded by the MacArthur Foundation. They're actually building 30 more of these across the country. So it's going to be it's a big deal. And the work that they do there is absolutely critical and it's actually phenomenal. So this is the Upstander project. This is something that you can do tomorrow in your school. What they did, here's the story, it's really interesting. One of the mentors went out for lunch and came back with some tacos. And for some reason, he drew a picture of a taco on a Post-it note and put it on the file cabinet. And what the kids started doing is grabbing Post-it notes and drawing their own interpretation of tacos for some reason and posting those. And when you talk with the mentors about their programs at UMedia, they will tell you that the project that they design, they've got this great project and the kids are not interested whatsoever in it. They thought it was a great project but it has no kid interest. So they started watching the kids and they designed their curriculum about what they see in their space in terms of developing programs for UMedia. Now, what they did here, this is a takeoff on that kid's drawing taco pictures. They said, well, our kids are interested in using Post-it notes, so this is what we'll do. And the question posed to the kids was this: where in your life recently have you been an upstander rather than a bystander? And so the kids walk in, see that question, they take a Post-it note and jot it down and said, I gave a homeless man $5 when my friend said not to give him any money. So where did you stand up for something instead of walking away and be a bystander? Think of and it's simple, right? It doesn't involve any technology at all. It's, again, going back to that range of capabilities across a variety of literacies, okay? I'm going to ask my kids to think, to write, to post, to communicate in a very simple, easy way. You can walk into your library. Some of the presenters earlier talked about where kids learn. Ask them where they learn. Where do you learn? That's the question. Put a Post-it note up there. Okay? And then you'll see on the other side of the coin, you will see this. You will see the most advanced kind of multimedia that they'll engage kids in. This is what they did is a whole project on the song What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. And they looked at all the social change that has taken place since that song was released. And there's a whole compilation of videos and so on about that. So one of the things that you'll see at UMedia, and I think is a great model for us, is to engage kids in that face-to-face interaction, sitting on a stool, telling a story, or very simple non-technology things, but across the range of that space, they help kids explore different dimensions of media all the way up to the most advanced. So that's for me, that factors into what I want my school to be and the kind of experiences I want my kids to have. Let's deepen it a little bit and talk about this unifying theme. It's a takeoff of the transliteracy. But what I want here, and you're getting a decidedly secondary viewpoint here. I've taught in high schools and worked in high schools my entire life. So when we're talking about high schools, and this I want to challenge you with, think about content here. Skills, habits of the mind, and dispositions. And when I walk up and down our hallways, what do I see our teachers doing? And I will say this, I'm not afraid to say it. What are they doing? What's a predominant instructional tool? They are lecturing. And what is the goal of the majority of our classrooms? It's to acquire content, right? All right? No, that's a worthy goal. What are skills, though? When you're talking about content, it's what you know, right? Skills are what you can do. We stop right here in a lot of ways. We go into here and touch on some of this. Habits of the mind are what? How I what? Think. And then a disposition is how I act, especially in new situations. So, I mean, when we're talking about a vision, we want kids to know things. We want them to be able to demonstrate certain skills and be able to do things. We want to encourage them to develop methodologies for thinking. And all that flows into a disposition. When I walk into a new learning situation, how do I act? How do I perform? What do I do? How do I use all those tools and those conversations, those networked conversations and networks and connections to people that I can use to learn? What's my disposition? Key thing for the school, and here's the critical thing. What's the last piece? Sorry for the color, I can't see that. It's experiences. What does that mean? How does it fit with the other four? What kind of experiences are you providing your kids in your school that guarantee that they will learn things, they will learn different kinds of skills, they will have opportunities to be challenged to think, and that will develop into a set of dispositions about how they act and act for the rest of their life. What experiences do you provide? I will argue that sitting in that classroom, in that square grid of chairs, is not getting it done right now. Okay? Now, we've learned all kinds of great things. We're all products of that, right? But is that going to be a contemporary kind of situation from now into the future for us? Do we need different kinds of things? So the idea here, let me go back and revisit this. I'm interested in a new kind of vision. And that vision is your current interpretation of how kids can learn and should learn. And it's shared and developed by everyone. Okay? And for me, that's thinking about the ecology of all the different kinds of capacities we have and how they interact. And it's also about being able to act across a range of literacies and perform with these kinds of ideas in mind. Does that make sense? Okay? So it's quite a mouthful. So, all right, so where do we do it? And this is the first thing. I'm going to give you 5 of these. And I'm going to push you a little bit. You may might not agree with any of these. But I'm going to look at school in a new way, a vision in a new way. And you can insert anything you want. You could put library right here. And I'm looking for spaces. I'm a big a believer that spaces are the forgotten aspect of what we do in school. One size space does not fit all. And if you come to the session tomorrow, we'll go through all of that and talk about what you can do with spaces and how they can be a much more inspiring, dynamic, and functional place to learn. So, spaces that inspire, spaces that support remix and creation. Your current spaces do that now. If I were to ask you to go back to that previous slide and list all the different kinds of just skills that you want kids to engage in and learn, would your spaces support that? And how do you know? Have you sat down as a faculty, as a school, as an institution, as a learning community, and as a community itself, and listed, we believe this to be true about the kinds of skills that we want our kids to demonstrate, and list them right out, and then say, where in our school can these spaces or these kinds of skills be developed? Do you have the spaces to support the development and understanding of content skills, habits of the mind, and dispositions? Do you have those spaces that develop that? Or don't you consider it? Okay? All right, so I'm looking for spaces where there are no boundaries. And that's a keynote thing to say, but I'm serious about that. Are our spaces limited, or do they provide kids with options and teachers with options to really explore beyond the walls of the school? I never thought I'd actually quote Justin Timberlake in one of my, but I did. Actually, it worked real well. All right, so what's it look like? It's not this. It's not that, is it? That's a gymnasium set up for a test, all too familiar to probably all of us. It is this, okay, in my mind. This is UMedia, okay? And what they do here, I've got plenty of time. What they do here is, this is about 4,000 square feet. It's a big, big space. And what's the first thing you notice when you look at this? What's the first thing you notice? You notice color, right? Yes, it's very colorful. Good. You notice color. And what do you notice right here? Books. It's not that hard. Books. Okay. What are they encouraging kids to do? Pick up a book and what? Read. Okay. They have the entire high school collection from Harold Washington Public Library in this space. And it rings around the back here. Now, you heard me mention Mimi Ito and the hanging out, messing around, and geeking out research. And these spaces are designed on that. So here's what it is. This space right here is the hanging out space. And these are artificial boundaries, right? There's no clear delineation when you walk in the space. You're now stepping into the messing around area. But this is the place where kids can eat and drink. They can't in any other space. It's got these soft, comfortable chairs and so on. So what's the intent of this particular aspect of the space? It's to do what? To get them in, right? To get them in, feel comfortable, start interacting, okay? Start talking to each other, start establishing those connections, all right, that are so important. That face-to-face dynamic, and that face-to-face dynamic that we have with our kids, that's what makes school special, right? It's never going to be replaced. That dynamic, that slight smile that you show a kid, or that slight touch on the shoulder, when just to reassure them, the smallest little thing, that's the smallest thing, a part of your day could be the biggest part of theirs. That kind of dynamic is something that is the essence of school and should never be lost. It is what we do. So here, they invite kids in and get them in to read. All right, now over here, what do you see this kid doing? This girl's reading. I think this kid's on a device. What's this kid doing? Playing a video game. So there's video games in there, and you see a little alcove here, more on that later. There's a sound booth here for recording. And this area here is the messing around area. So get the kids in the hanging out space. And my question for you right now, where do kids hang out in your spaces, in your schools? Where in your spaces are those magnets? Where do kids hang out, and why? Why do kids go to those spaces and use those spaces? And if you sit down and take a look at that space and analyze that space and you see kids using it, can you replicate the characteristics of that space anywhere else in your school to accomplish the same kind of thing? All right, so they transition artificially into this space. What do they do there in the messing around phase? This is school as studio again. What do they do? It's play, right? They tinker, they play. And they figure out where my interests are and what do I want to explore? Where are my passions? Where in your schools do you have spaces that allow kids to explore their passions? If we know that kids are involved in friendship-based activities and in interest-based activities, and the research says that, we know that from our practical experience in schools, where are the spaces in your school that inspire their passions, allow them to explore their passions? All right? So the mentors are right here. They watch the kids. And if I'm interested in digital video, guess what they do over here in the geeking out space? They dig deep, okay? Deep dive into the media and learn how to use it at a very profound level. All right? This is, yeah, Mike.
The school where, they're ringing bells and people moving from the sign room to the sign room, how would a space like that be utilized? How do you get access?
What Mike asked, in a school where there's bells and there's a bell schedule and you got kids moving from history to math and so on, in an 8-period day like we have, how does something like this exist? This space is obviously in the library, right? But in this space, every kid can get to it because it's right on the Chicago L. But you're asking in a school, how do we do this? Do we have to have every classroom like this? Yes or no? No. Is it realistic? No. Space design, of course, is extremely expensive, redesign. Could you have, and here's my answer, Mike, could you have one space like this that was open? Could you have a space, you don't have to have it everywhere, but you have to have it, right? Could you have a big, large maker space like this in your school? Could you redo your library to do this? Could you section off a place in your library to have a maker space? or someplace as a studio. I don't think it's realistic to rebuild this throughout the entire, you can't do this with, but you can take elements of this, right? What works here? What works in this space that you could replicate, and that's the value of looking at spaces like this, is that there are things that are good here, and how do we replicate that? Could we, for example, see the green, can you paint walls? I mean, what's the relationship of color to learning? Is there one? Instead of the drab gray or beige that we paint on our cinder block walls. And could this be idea paint, okay? Where the kids could write on the walls, okay? By the way, if you've never seen idea paint, it's just turns any surface. Can't use it on cinder blocks really too well, but it turns any surface into a writable surface. You can paint it your tabletops, paint your walls, things like that. The one you should check out if you've never seen it is Whiteyboard. I have no association with them. Whiteyboard.com, where you can get big pieces of writable, stickable stuff that you can peel off and put on. That works pretty well actually on cinder blocks. Whiteyboard.com. So this is intriguing as a model for me. So here's a classroom. This work is being done by the Lovett School in Atlanta. You take a look very closely. I don't know if you can see it. I'll read them to you. This is a typical classroom, and they're rethinking their classrooms as studios. You have a hearth, reflection, viewing, Harkness. It's an independent school. They have a lot of buy-in with Harkness tables and discussions. Here's your studio. Here's a stage. Here's a threshold area. Okay, invites, transitions, invitation, and curation. When you walk into the room, that tells the learner what's about to happen, right? If you've got a arrangement with tables, for example, that's in a circle versus that arrangement of chairs in that grid, when the learner walks in, the learner knows expects what the kind of learning is going to be. Space, in a lot of ways, communicates what learning should or is about to happen. So they've got that. They've also looking at the walls, and here's that whiteboard paint. And so if I go back here, oops, this way, is that something that's intriguing to you? Rethinking your classrooms with these kind of components. This is brand new work. It's online. You can see the entire design, and it's actually pretty profound. It's really the first attempt at that I've seen in a long time of really rethinking specific classroom space and what it means for teaching and learning. The idea is to have the classroom as flexible as possible, as agile as possible. What's the difference between flexibility and agility when we're talking about spaces? The space is flexible if you can rearrange it, right? The space is agile if you can do it quickly. When I taught biology, I had these big tables that had slate tabletops. I could rearrange them. It was flexible. Those things required about 4 kids to move them, 5 kids. They're heavy. All right, so you've got this, and so this is the kind of things that they're doing and expect to have access to. But they've also done this, and I want to challenge you to think about your walls and your surfaces. Where are your learning surfaces? And we put posters up, so what? What kind of learning do those posters serve? Wouldn't you much rather have a creation space on that wall where kids could get up? And if you bring your own device, you do your outlining, you do your flow charting, whatever you do, and then you take a picture with your camera, you put that into Evernote or into Google somehow, and now you've got a record of that. So now we're seeing the interaction again between the digital ecology of things and that physical space that we've always had, but rethought in a new way. We've got the Blue School. Are you familiar? Blue School? You ever heard of it? Blue School. What is this? I think one of the presenters talked about hallways. Would you ever do this in your hallway? Right now, hallway is mural, a manifestation of a larger exploration of form. In this case, done in glow paint, and after months of conversation about squiggles and shapes. Always in progress, always waiting exploration of meaning. Hallway as studio, spaces as studio. Rethink the way in which we use space in support of the development, content skills, habits of mind, dispositions. The space becomes part of the experience. More documentation. I love this. Everywhere, mostly depicting the evolution of shared inquiry that comprises a curriculum that is constantly evolving. A mix of reflection, quotes, and pictures, it celebrates and illuminates process. Here we explore the transition from squiggle to form to production. That's your hallway. What do your hallways look like right now? Oh, I thought they look like that? Thank you for, I didn't even see that. Yeah, so do ours. And we got lockers, we have needs, right? So how do you take those ideas? Space is not limited just to the classroom. Rethinking the notion of classroom and redesigning the space begins with believing that the classroom, that's not the model. It can be anything, okay? You have to reject the notion that a classroom is always a classroom. That's a given, right? Something we hold true. It doesn't have to be our current vision of a classroom. We can change that. So we've got these kinds of models that are out there, and they are of high value to us in terms of suggesting to us new ways of thinking that contribute and support a new vision. Here's one of the things that we've done in our school, and this is really, really successful. These are just rooms off our library. Nothing big, no big deal. And what we've done is we've got 2 of them, and kids can sign these out. And what do you notice here? We've got a computer. One of them has a projector, a table, and what's this right here? That's writable wallpaper. It's not the idea paint. I went with the wallpaper on this. And what do you notice around that wallpaper? You see that black boundary, right? And one day I walked in and those black borders were up there. And who put them up? It's easy. The custodians did, right? And I go, why did you guys do that? And they said, well, if you don't have those borders, kids are going to write on the wall. That's the goal. And no, they won't, because we got smart kids. They're going to, oh, look, it stops here, okay? And they're good kids. They won't do it. And for me, that represents a border on a limitation on thinking. I didn't want that there. But if you've worked in a school any length of time, you understand what group you don't want to anger. So the border stayed. Yeah. So you've got this, right? And we allow, you can do really any, you can't eat in these rooms. You can drink, and we have, our kids can drink coffee in the library. We have a cafeteria right across the hallway from our library. But you have this now classroom is studio, library, we bring your own device, right? And so the kids are bringing laptops, video cameras. That's all their equipment, and on that writable wall becomes the outline for their video production. You've got kids reviewing for a test using that wall. You've got kids in the room practicing for a presentation. And I had to put this up because I could never remember this during keynote. These are kids, they're figuring out the circumference of the circle relative to the radius of the triangle inside it. They're doing it just for fun. That's the kind of kids we have. So we're very lucky. But these spaces can be anywhere. And what they are is they can be reshaped by the students. Where do you give, in your spaces in your school, where do you give kids the control and the ability to take ownership of that space? Can't be everywhere. But where do you allow them to take advantage of the space in the way in which they choose to support their own passions or their learning? Okay? It's a critical, important piece that fits into a vision of what school can be. Second thing, school as app. What does that mean? School as app. Think about all the apps you have on your phone or on your laptop, your tablet. What is the components of, what does that do for you? Why do you have apps? What is an app? How are apps leveraged? And how does that representation, could that transfer to school as that kind of app? All right, school on demand, school as node, 24/7 connection. Someone, I think, with the Whataburger thing you mentioned, Carl. Okay, so do you have my insert your school name here app? How many of you have an app for your school? Well, I know you do, Carolyn. Okay, you guys rock over there. Who else? Okay, so we're starting to get there, right? Right now, do you think you should have? All right. You got to answer this. Do you think you should have an app for your school? In 2012 and beyond, are you providing a contemporary experience for your kids if you don't have that kind of access to the resources? You got a website probably, right? But do you have an app? I don't know. Question. Have you positioned your school for any time, anywhere, any place learning? And are you designing right now for mobile? Are you designing curriculum for mobile? Are you designing your learning experiences for mobile environments? If not, you better be. You see what's going on right now? Okay? You can learn anywhere. School is just a node. Classroom is just a place in that node. Kids can learn anywhere. How can we improve our experience for our kids if we contribute to that ecology of things and give them access to the things and the resources that we have at our disposal? Because we've got good things at our disposal. Okay? This is what I never want to see ever again from our librarians. I don't ever, in fact, I'm in charge of the library. I have no idea why. But I am. And it's a lot of fun, actually. I've learned a lot about librarians and libraries, and it's been really a growth experience for me and an important one. But what should the sign say? This is just up the other day. What should it say? The physical library is closing for now, right? But feel free to jump on 24/7 and use our digital resources. And I'm very serious about that. The library's not closing. It's not. We don't want it to close. We want it 24/7 available on demand, right? And so we've got this, and we've built it out. We've got our LibGuides. If you're a librarian, you know what these things are. We've got over, I think, 110 different LibGuides. They're just basically pathfinders or curated content. Okay. Question for you: could kids add LibGuides? Should kids be able to create these pathfinders? Should kids be able to share back to the school resources and have the ability to contribute to what other kids can access? Yeah, they should. And so we've got this going. Here's our library to go. And this is the front page. This is it's actually in development right now. We do not have a school app, but we're building on our school library app. We have this, and then when you click in, you get this. GBS library, books. We've got 26 databases. That's one of the I'm not going to make any comment about databases, but single sign-on to all the databases through a mobile app. So it's going to be available in the Play Store on the Android side and iTunes. We're using a product called Conduit to facilitate that process. So across the range of devices, across that technology ecosystem, I want my kids, I want our kids to have access to everything that we provide. So the school becomes one of the suppliers of resources for kids. And we make it transparent, we make it visible, and we encourage our kids to use it. Okay? Library on the go. So to build that out a little bit, your idea on that, this is what we have. And this is sort of our multi-dimensional model. And you've heard me earlier say that it's really important to start thinking about the intersection and the relationship between physical learning environments and digital ones. And if you don't have digital or dedicated digital spaces, you got to start thinking about what that might look like. So here's our physical space right here. And then we have built out a Moodle presence. It's optional for our teachers. And I won't comment on that. But we do have, over the last 4 years, we have 225 teachers. We've got about 160 of them on Moodle. Okay? So we're building out and continue to work with that. That is a space for what? Moodle is for who? It's for teachers. It's a dedicated space for teachers. It's a dedicated place for placing the content and the resources that are important for success for students in that particular class. All right? And over here, we have a student learning space, and that's Google Apps. Why the separation? Because we sat down, we talked with our kids, and we said, we're going to build out this multi-dimensional learning space that's one part physical and 3 parts mostly digital. And we said, we're going to have Moodle. And they said, well, we don't want to use Moodle so much. We said, what do you mean? They said, well, here's what happens. And they had some experience in Blackboard before. So what they said is, when we have a Moodle class and we build content into that or put content into that, that resides with the teacher. And we graduate from school or we graduate from that class and move on. Where's our content that we've created? Well, where does it reside? It's in the teacher's space in Moodle, and they no longer have access to it. So hence, we have a dedicated student space. Each one of our kids has a Google account and all that that brings. Okay? And so it's important that they own that content creation Okay, think about it. You can have your own YouTube channel. You can have your Picasso web albums. You can have all that stuff inside Google. They are in control of it, and it's built within our system. And that's important for us, right, as educators. You know, on the instructional technology side of the things, we have to have some resemblance of control, and we have to be able to manage our spaces because we are indeed a school. I would never shy away from that. There are certain limits to that. That's all predicated on your culture and of your community and how that manifests itself. But then again, it's very important that we do give them their own space. Then this is a little bit different, Knowledge Commons. And what we intended there, we have other groups, right, that are not part of a teacher or a student grouping. We have the librarians, and their LibGuides presence falls into this Knowledge Commons. We have the nurses. We have the guidance department, okay, which runs Naviance, and which is sort of a content management system for guidance counselors. That fits in with the Knowledge Commons. But what we wanted to do, and we haven't got there yet, admittedly, is we want this to be an area that shares and celebrates individual expertise and capabilities of our students and teachers. So if you are knowledgeable about photography, you can post something into this, okay? This is a place where the community shares their understanding and their abilities, capabilities, okay? That's what that's intended for. That's our model for our space. And here's what it looks like. Here's the room, and this is really nice to see. You've got the physical space, and then you've got Google Docs right here, and you've got Prezi, two cloud-based kind of apps. So you see the interaction and the importance of the relationship between what you can do in the cloud, in that digital space, and where it occurs in the school, in the physical space. And then here's where we're stepping into, sort of interesting. What do you recognize? What is this? Anybody know? It's hard to see, I know. It's actually Google Docs. It's Google Apps. And with the teacher, we have a brand new course called Media Collage. And it's looking at a semester course and helping our kids understand the relationship and the importance of media in their lives and how it influences learning. And so what we have is the teacher came to me, we sat down and planned that over the summer. He said, I need to have some place for, digital space. So we kicked around the idea of Moodle a little bit. We're considering open class. And then we said, what about Google? And so he's building out an entire class presence in Google Apps. Now, you know that has file size limitations, ultimately. So everything he uploads is a Google Doc, which doesn't count against him. So anyway, the kids have access to this. And now we have the capability to engage all those different sharing permissions that are so important within the Google ecosystem. And so it's an intriguing model. What can we do? And we're stepping away from our dedicated Moodle presence and saying, what if we stepped into Google and used their tools to have an integrated combination of the student-teacher experience across that digital platform? Sort of interesting idea. Okay. All right, so we've got the first two, school as network, school as studio, school as app. And the network stuff is important, okay? School is network, network is a school. And is this something that's important? Have we always done this? We have. Okay, and how about this? Anyone can be a teacher, anyone can be a learner. Do you believe that? Okay, can kids teach you things? Yeah, they can, certainly. In that same media collage class right now, the kids are doing a 10-minute session, almost an Ignite session, Science Leadership Academy. And I'm going back to Mimi Ito's idea of an academic intervention to show them how the tools as well as networks can be used academically. How are you creating spaces to allow them to do this? Are you familiar with this? Stanford AI class. Because this is happening right now in a big way. Not familiar? Okay, this is the first Stanford class online. It's a MOOC. It's a massive online open class. How many people signed up for this class? It's 180,000 people signed up for this class. 180,000 people signed up, okay? Now, as you might expect, high attrition in this class, right? I think about 6,000 people successfully finished it, okay? But the 200 kids, this is one of the largest classes on the Stanford campus. 200 kids usually, or students usually take this. And And what happened to, as this class progressed online, what happened to face-to-face participation on the Stanford campus? Okay. 44 different languages this is available in. Who did the interpretation of all those languages? Students did. Okay. So what Stanford did, and this is exploding, this is the hottest topic in educational technology right now, MOOCs, M-O-O-C. And there's all kinds of permutations of that now that are expanding out. It's also being monetized by a certain number of groups. Udacity is one, for example. But this is learning as a network. And it's really, really intriguing model. And I'm not saying that you're going to anytime soon have one of these in your school district, but there are things that we can pull out that make this intriguing that we can replicate on a smaller scale within our situation. Here's one of the very first ones. This is Moby MOOC. It's a MOOC on mobile technologies. MOOC stands for Massive Open Online Course. They now have MOOSes, M-O-O-S, Massive Open Online Seminar. And then they have LOOCs, L-O-O-K, Little Open Online Class. So it's a place to make your mark right now if you're in educational technology. Anyway, here's the interesting thing. Here's how it works. Class is available online, right? Anywhere in the world. You can do that. You can access it through our technologies on any device. And the interesting thing is that there's going to be, in this class there was 3,000 people. The first thing you do is you go in and you declare what you want to learn about. You declare about what you want to learn about in the context of mobile technologies. That can be anything. And that's made apparent and transparent to all members of the MOOC. And what do people then do? Let's say I want to learn about Android devices, and these four wanted to do the same. What do we do inside the MOOC? We self-organize, right? We self-organize. And now we've got this little group inside the larger that all have the same passion. Second thing that you do is every week they send you more resources about mobile technologies than you possibly can consume. Okay? And what do you have to do as a learner? You have to make a choice among what the kind of resource you want to learn about. For example, they may send you blog posts, right? They may send you YouTube videos. They may send you scholarly articles. And it can be anything, right? And you pick and choose the kinds of things that you want to learn from. Can't learn from everything, it's too much. But what they're doing is they're giving the learner the option and the choice to be able to make that decision as a learner as to the kind and types of media I want to learn from. I've already got my group, okay? Now I have different kinds of media. I was talking about that ecology of things again, all right? So that's one thing. Now, could we replicate that in our schools? Could I have, you're starting to see a little bit of, what's it called? A little bit, sort of on the fringe here, a little bit, flipping the classroom, okay? But could I present to kids, I want you to learn on these topics, and I give you, select 3 out of this list of 20. What will you select and why? Okay? Make the choice yourself. The other thing is that you get to, the 5 of us are working together, and then all the rest of you are in the same class. You get to pick and choose the methodology for explaining and demonstrating and making public your understanding. How would you do this? Joel might use a blog. Carl might set up a Twitter stream. Okay? Brian, I know what Brian would do. Brian would do something. Okay? Okay? But it's learner control. I get to choose the methodology and the way in which I show to the world what I want to tell them. And then what happens to all those different streams? Have you heard of RSS technologies? You can collect all that, and that becomes now our textbook. I've got all these different streams from everybody in the class. They're feeding into a central location in a reader like Google Reader, and I can see what everybody producing across the range of media that they're making their conscious choice about how they want to display their knowledge. That's what's taking place. Go back to your classrooms right now, your school right now. That's what's pushing education on the digital side of things. Okay? The fine ringtone or whatever that was. Okay. All right, MITx, same thing, right? MIT is always, MIT and a lot of institutions that have always had these open classes. MIT in the first 10 years of their open courseware initiative served 100 million people across the world. Okay? You could always take a MIT class. You're not going to be able to interact with the instructors or with the other students on campus, but you can interact with the content, and you can take that class if you're that self-directed. MITx takes it to the next level and does involve the instructor and other participants. Okay? The first class, Circuits and Electronics, had more people successfully complete it than would take place, that have taken place in the 40 years that they have had a similar kind of course. I think I said that right. All right? Massive participation in this. And it's really intriguing where this is going. How many of you would be, that MOOC is intriguing to you in terms of taking that class? They're hard, right? They'd be hard? Because you're not sitting in class and the teacher's not telling you what to do. It's a challenge, but that's where this is going. This landscape is not going away. And the dominant, pervasive nature of this kind of new learning experience is certainly impacting the college landscape. I wonder how we are preparing kids for success in this. For example, if I'm expected to do this, how we develop the dispositions necessary to step into that new learning experience and be successful. What do we arm them with? What kind of experiences have we provided them to be successful, to build those dispositions?
Do you have an idea for the typical student base for the technical courses offered by MIT and Stanford?
Sure. Probably pretty high. But that's one of the things in this particular class. I don't have the figures. The figures are online. But these do suffer, and I will admittedly say this, from a high degree of attrition through the course. And so, you know, you're talking about taking an MIT class. You're going to get an MIT experience. And so no, I can't speak more intelligently about that.
David, I can tell you that's 100% true. I tried to take that Stanford as an iPad course.
Okay.
Program, but it's tough. You go back and replay the lessons as much as you real work.
Yeah, it's not easy, but again, I want to, you know, how do we bring a similar kind of experience to our kids? What is good about that? What's not so good about that? Can we look at that as K-12 learning and say, interesting. How does this inform our practice? Okay, and this is what's sort of cool too. Anytime, any place, anyone can be a teacher and a learner. Have you seen Our School? You got an hour, jump online, teach other people stuff. Okay, this is passion-based. It's informal. It's not a technical, not a school itself. But what it is a conduit for people to join and say, hey, I've got this, I'm understandable about, I know photography again. Okay, so I'm going to teach a class. And you can go online and sign up for these courses. These courses are where? Digital or physical? No, they're physical. So you go to a city and you'd be able to say, I'm going to sign up for this class. And it's school on demand. It's learning on demand. You got Our School. You've also got Skillshare, same kind of thing. And these things are blowing up. There are actually Skillshare parties. Okay? People organizing socially around learning events. Sort of cool. And then Skillshare, and if you want a really interesting thing, they actually have a page on their site that talks about how to be a teacher. And it's really a simple, pretty elegant design, because the people that are engaging in this stuff don't have our experience, right? They don't know how to teach. You know, there are things that, you know, you can do to have a more successful experience or create one for people who sign up in your class. But Skillshare got smart, because what happens in that MOOC class, the 5 of us are in that MOOC, what's the further intent of that is when we stop the MOOC, I still have what? Connections to these people, because I've been working with them, right? So not only do you leave with an increased level of understanding about mobile technologies, you also now leave with a learning network that you can continue to learn with. And so what Skillshare saw was these one-time events where people sat down and learned together and then disbanded, didn't quite serve the experience as they intended to, so they built out a digital site, okay? They built out a digital site to complement that, so to continue that connection, to continue that learning among those people that took that class. Now you have this. Again, we start to see the connection and the importance of that interaction between digital and physical spaces as a model of a blended, multidimensional kind of vision for what schools should be. All right, schools canvas. What if schools were a canvas? What do I mean by this? Well, we got to start doing a better job of showing the world what we do. That's really important right now. And how would you do that? I mean, think about your school right now. How do you share with the world the celebrations, the successes of your school? More importantly, how do the kids show what they can do? In our school, we've developed a series of social media guidelines, or social media guidelines, and it gives the teachers and kids permission to publish their first and last name with their content online. Somebody's got to step up and say, it's okay to do that, because we believe that it's important for you to establish an academic profile online that counteracts your bad Facebook profile. Okay? Schools have to take that stance. Again, that's a reflection of your climate in your school, your culture of your school, your community, and what you can do. But again, in our community says we want our kids to be found online, and we want them to, that when they're found, to be associated with things that represents who they are and what they can do. Schools canvas. What are these? Social media. All right, ready? Quiz time, right? Ready?
Facebook, Twitter, Foursquare.
Foursquare. Hold on. I didn't move the cursor, man. I know you're excited. Foursquare. My favorite. I'm the mayor of Caribou Coffee in Naperville. I'm very proud of that accomplishment. The mayor. And you ever watch you see people all the time right there? You walk in and they start looking at you. Says, I'm going to take that away from you. No, you're not. Check in. Okay. Could you use Foursquare in your schools? Did you ever see the site? Oh yeah, I know you guys. Yeah. You ever seen the site Just Rob Me? There it is. You gotta love that. It's actually down now, but what it did is actually take the feed out of Foursquare, the API, and connect it, and it said, all these people are not home, so go rob them. Be careful with Foursquare. All right, next. Tumblr, LinkedIn, Pinterest.
Google+, Blogger, Vimeo, Instagram, Picasa, Flickr.
Did a great job on it. These are also the things that I've been asked by my faculty to use this year as a way to get kids' content out there and ideas out there. So, how does social media become part of that canvas? Gotta be careful, right? The reason we have guidelines right now when you're talking about social media, you're talking about an absence of case law and how these different kinds of uses impact schools. The reason we have guidelines is that we don't become the case law, right? Okay? All right, so this is one way, this is the canvas, this is the network, this is Ecology of Things. How about this? Oh, we're back to UMedia. Okay? So this is the top of their website. And look what they've got. They've got a calendar here. They've got Facebook integration. They've got Remix, one book, one Chicago, Neverwhere. So they're doing some reading, but they're translating that into a digital product, digital interpretation. Here's the bottom of the page. What's going on. They've got actually a leaderboard. I have no idea how that works. But here's the Mark Bradford project with a local Chicago author coming in, working with the kids. And then they have Vimeo, Facebook, Flickr, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So they're loading up on the social media and saying, okay, 2012 and beyond, that's how you connect. That's how you tell people where you are, who you are, what you can do. And when you talk with the mentors, they will say different groups use different tools. The kids that are interested in photography use Flickr, for example. Video production kids use Vimeo. They're not all using them all across all the range of devices, but they pick and choose what makes sense for them, what they want to work in. Again, choice in education. This is in our school, a very simple way, okay? What are these? We have a photography class, and they still do print. They still do the black and white film stuff. Why? Who wants that? No, the kids want it. Kids want it. So we're talking about understanding photography at a very basic, fundamental, historical, principled way, and then going across a range of modalities now in photography all the way up to digital. These are pictures the kids have taken, right? And they're in our hallway. There's your bad cinder block hallway. Okay? And what's our teacher doing here? Taking a picture of the QR code. Okay, not a big deal. Okay, taking a picture of the QR code. You're a bring your own device district, right, or a one-to-one or whatever you are. Should you be using these kind of technologies? Yeah. And so where does that take when Joe Karlovsky, who's a teacher, takes a picture of the QR code, where does it take Joe? Okay. Yeah, you're real close. It doesn't take you to a website. What sort of does? It takes you here. Okay? And there's the girl explaining her photography to the viewer on their phone. Okay? Simple idea. But if we go back, this is on the wall, right? And that's where it may go. The teacher decided, let's make this, let's take, how can we amplify, how can we extend, how can we make the user experience at a different level, at a deeper level. And so what they chose to do is say, explain yourself and what you did and how you, what your interest in photography is. Where's the YouTube channel? Where is it? It's within our, where? Google. It's what? Okay, next. All right. That video is in, that channel is in our Google Apps for Education system. Okay? So again, we're providing that framework. Could they have posted on their own channel? Sure. We said, hey, you've got that. It's a school thing. We do need to be a school. Post it here instead. Okay? They still have access to it. All right. So final thing here, and then we'll do some conclusions. I'm almost done. Is school is third place. Have you heard of the concept of third place before? Third place comes from, if you haven't seen the book, it's by Ray Oldenburg. It's an older book, but what it does is it talks about the concept of a third place, a social space that's intermediate between home and work. Starbucks would be an example of a third place. Okay? Now I'm not using, and for kids, Starbucks could be the same kind of thing. A third place. I'm using a little bit different context, and I want that third place to be inside a school. I want informal places for kids inside schools. I want spaces where kids can dissociate from technology. Okay? Again, I'm interested in that transliteracy approach where kids have the opportunity to demonstrate their content understanding, their skills, their habits of the mind, their thinking, and their dispositions in a non-technology way. That's what this allows. Where in your spaces do you have informal locations for kids to gather and work together and connect? Or, better yet, in your community, where have you worked with businesses and other locations to help them understand that your kids, our kids, the kids that we teach in our schools, need to have that kind of space. And please anticipate that you're going to see our kids here. Carolyn?
I would argue that we need the same spaces for teachers.
Absolutely, without a doubt. Come to the session tomorrow, I got a couple of examples for you. Yeah, I would. What she said is that we need the same spaces for teachers, without a doubt. That's certainly true. So here's what it looks like. This is right down the road from my house. This is Caribou Coffee. Okay, this is on a Saturday. Kids studying calculus, and what they do is they will spend 10 minutes working, stop, grab their phones, jump on Facebook, text, and so on. So it's punctuated. It's not continual. And then when you're taking a picture and they see you take a picture and they go, why is that fat old man taking a picture of us kids? Yeah, you have to go over and explain yourself. And these are kids actually from a school I used to work in, and I said, would you like to have a space like in the school? And they looked at me like, duh. So these third kind of places are really intriguing for our kids, and they take advantage of it. How do we build these actually into our school so we actually have school as third place as well? You see this. This is a wonderful space in Chicago. I can never remember the name, so I left a note for myself. It's a next door cafe. And look at this space. Who wouldn't want to learn in this space? Look at, you got the analog chalkboard up here, calendar. That's cool. And you've got the wireless, you got all this. And actually, this is really interesting. Guess who built this space? State Farm Insurance.
Really?
Yes. And over here is a State Farm Insurance agent and investment banker. So they said, how do we attract the kinds of people that don't know about really insurance and started their investment portfolios? I know, we'll build a really attractive space where they can come, a third place, and learn and use their devices. And there it is. Okay? Really, really cool space. Then you've got the Apple Store with this phenomenal number of kids, users. You got this highly engaged space. And what do you do when you walk in? When you walk in, you see their products. In the middle, you can play with their products. In the back, you'll learn about their products. Hanging out, messing around, geeking out. Same kind of model, okay? So you've got all these people in a space, in a formal space. Then you've got this also. This is a little alcove. That's State Street in Chicago. And it's that place, this place for dissociation, quiet study, reading, be by yourself, and learn independently. Okay? Whew. Time for some conclusions. All right, first thing, start rethinking what school can be. That relates to your vision. If you haven't had a chance to revisit your vision, is it current? Okay, because visions change, missions don't. We all have the same mission, educate kids. The vision is an interpretation given the current climate, current realities of what education is and what education can be. Second thing, think about these things. They might not resonate with you, okay? But I'm looking at ways in which I can say, what is the foundation, what is the essence of where I want education to go? And personally, I want kids to be connected, and I want kids to be able to stand up in front of an audience and speak, and I want them to use multimedia products as well, across a range of those literacies. So what is your vision, and more importantly even, that's associated with that, what kind of experiences do you provide in your school that allow that vision to be realized? Because if you don't do it, they're going to find a way on their own. Because school is just one node now. Everything's available online. And that's not going away. Okay? Those classes you can take, what's going to happen? I might take a class at MITx or at Stanford. If I successfully complete that, what do I get now? Does anybody know? What do I get upon successful completion? I get a badge, right? I don't know how you feel about that, but what happens when you can accumulate badges from MIT, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, University of Chicago, and when does that become something that an employer, something that other learners would look at and justify inequality to a college degree? Would that ever happen? I don't know. We'll see. We're about to find out. So the question is, we got to start thinking about this because the world's moving on, and we're faced with having to mandate and all those mandates, so we got to find a way. The big thing, the big question of our time is how are we going to take school, where are we going to take school, how are we going to get there together, actually. So here's what it looks like for me. Choice. I want learners to have choice. On demand across all their devices. Literally every space in a school is a space for learning, hallways included, everyone. Okay? There's no boundaries for learning in this model. Anything's a possibility if we have and understand that we can connect, communicate, collaborate across a range of face-to-face, across devices, everything. And then final, this is from Sylvia Martinez, and I love this. This goes back to my idea about the iPads inserting into a computer. Do better things, not things just better. What's new? What are you doing that's better? It's important to make things that you do better, but it's also important to start thinking, how can we develop better things to make school come alive for our kids and have that education be what we know it can be, what they need it to be. Thanks. Finished right on time.